I'd like to thank the organizers for the opportunity to present today from Biodesix our experiences with our GeneStrat NGS liquid biopsy test in the community. Myself, I am the Chief Development Officer at Biodesix as well as the New York State Lab Director. So thank you again to the organizers for allowing us to present some of our work at Oncomind 20 World 2024. Full disclosure, Thermo Fisher Scientific and affiliates are not endorsing, recommending, or promoting any use of application of Thermo Fisher Scientific products. Parties presenting images, text material represent they have the rights to do so. That is myself, and I was provided an honorarium by Thermo Fisher Scientific for this presentation. That completes my disclosures. So first, a little bit about Biodesix, our company. And there are certain statements in here I want to make sure I emphasize. But at Biodesix, we envision a world where all critical lung diseases are diagnosed early and treated quickly with the guidance of personalized diagnostics. So we've been in the diagnostics space for quite a while, and the focus for our company and teams are on blood-based diagnostics, and as you'll see in here, touching on the theme of providing rapid results so treatment decisions can be made quickly. A little bit about the laboratories. We have two highly certified, from a regulatory perspective, clinical testing laboratories. Today I'm speaking to you from our location in Louisville, Colorado, where we actually just completed our move in January of this year from nearby Boulder, Colorado. So you might have known us as Biodesix from Boulder. We're now happily located in a new state-of-the-art facility and associated laboratories here in Louisville. In addition, our Kansas laboratory is also similarly accredited. I'll share with you on the next slide what products run in which facility or services run in which facility, but two very highly certified and accomplished laboratories where we offer our diagnostic testing from. For today, we won't spend much time on the left, but just so you know, in our Kansas laboratory, major focus on proteomic testing, so not for today, but for the future, where we are working on mass spectrometry and ELISA-based testing in our Notify test, so our nodule risk assessment testing. Today, though, we'll spend time on the right, and more particularly on the right in the center, with the GeneStrat NGS test. So IQ Lung is our treatment guidance testing series of tests that we run here from Louisville. And again, today, we'll spend time with the GeneStrat NGS genomic test, which is focused on blood-based testing. In this laboratory as well, we do a variety of blood-based testing for support of biopharma and other diagnostic companies. I will talk a little bit about that, but today, again, experiences with the GeneStrat NGS test is our focus. So delving just a little bit deeper, GeneStrat NGS test is focused in the middle. I already touched on its blood-based. It's focused on guidelines, recommended tumor mutations, pan-cancer assay, but Biodesix is commercialized in non-small cell lung cancer. The panel does contain 52 genes, which includes the 4 major variant classes. So somatic nucleotide variants, indels, fusions, and copy number amplifications. Shown at the bottom of this are the key references, so 2 peer-reviewed publications that related to test validation, sensitivity, and specificity. So shown here at the time of validation, go to market 2 years ago, 95% sensitivity and 100% specificity. I'll actually share today an update to these numbers from an independent assessment with a proficiency panel that touches on the sensitivity and specificity claims and where we are today. Go-to-market also included a targeted design to deliver turnaround time for results for specimens received in the lab and then ready for release in an average of 3 business days. So again, today we'll focus on our real-world experiences, and I'll share design was one, but how are we doing in the real world? And then lastly, important, of course, to our patients and physicians is that the test is covered by Medicare and many private payers. So what is the GeneStrat NGS test? I had the pleasure of presenting last year at the 2023 Oncomind World. Similarly, on our test development and validation. So today we won't go over those details, but I just wanted to point it out for reference. Again, it's a rapid turnaround focused liquid biopsy next generation sequencing test. The test is pan-cancer, but we have commercialized and offered this test primarily for non-small cell lung cancer as an aid to physicians in providing molecular characterization from blood in cancer patients' disease. It is intended for patients diagnosed with advanced stages of non-small cell lung cancer, and we touched on the genes and the mutation classes that are already there. For sake of clarity, I have included limitations and disclaimers that appear on every test result report that's released. So part of today's presentation will include examples of that test result report, but I wanted to make sure that everyone knew limitations are included. The test is approved as well by New York State. Myself, I am the New York State Laboratory Director for a corporate lab here in Colorado. So rest assured that our validations follow the processes for New York State CLEP oncology guidelines. And we've done, I think, a good job in publishing our studies. So today, the grayed out areas are not meant to be things I won't talk about because I touched on these in Oncomine World 2023, as well as I said there are publications here going back to 2017 that demonstrate what types of activities are done in validation. So today we'll focus on the bottom, which is highlighted. The test is launched. It's been on market for 2 years. Several thousands of tests have now been run. So we've got a pretty comprehensive view of uptake, so access, turnaround time in the real world, performance with independent proficiency testing, and then improvements to our results report. So what is important now that we're on market to physicians and patients? So on-market experiences, here I'll share a map of the United States. So you can see everything from Hawaii and Puerto Rico, and then the mainland United States, continental United States, where the bubbles show where our test has been utilized. So the GeneStrat NGS test is shown here specifically. And you can see, possibly by no chance, that the vast majority of our testing is focused in areas with high incidence of non-small cell lung cancer. So focused areas include the Southeast. Reason as well for this focus is underrepresented populations that are maybe underserved. And we did a survey recently of underrepresented groups or populations tested by our laboratory. Heavy focus from FDA, heavy focus from NCI on inclusion of diverse genetic populations in testing for cancer. And so as a reflection of our survey, although we currently do not collect patient demographics, we are working on this, we use census data that showed 85% of our NGS tests delivered actually come from patients in cities in that map, with greater than 30% of the population being underrepresented individuals. So our tests not only obviously are bringing value in terms of the clinical diagnosis, but also from our mission and vision, reaching populations that are in greatest need. In terms of the turnaround time, so it's known that turnaround time, send out tests, in-house tests are always beneficial. More information earlier in starting that treatment decision as soon as you can. So for a send out test, i.e. community physician has a patient in, they do a draw, they send it back in our specimen collection kit, we receive that specimen, enter into the test process, and then the results are ready at a point. So I told you earlier, our target was 3 business days. So how are we doing in the real world? So this is Biodesix data on file, and I'm happy to share that our average analytic turnaround time, or TAP, is about 63 hours, median 68 hours. Now, interestingly, not every test request form or TRF comes in with the entirety of the demographic information that's needed to release that result. So when we receive a test result request form, that is not complete. So patient name may be misspelled, practice location may not be completely filled out. That sample goes on hold. So if we hold a specimen, I'm also happy to say we process that to cDNA, freeze the specimen, clarify information, and re-enter into the processing. Even with that delay for information, turnaround time after bringing the specimen back into the processing is 65 hours. And then if there is no hold, i.e. complete demographic information is received with the specimen, that obviously drops now to about 60 hours. So I'd say we're doing fairly well against our target. So how is the test now performing as well analytically? I shared our validation data on sensitivity and specificity. So we participate, as many testing labs do, in independent proficiency testing. And one of those panels, which is actually quite well used and respected, assessed the GeneStrat NGS test. Happy to share, this is a very recent test of this panel. So GS NGS, or the GeneStrat NGS test, with a certified lab provider for proficiency panels. We successfully processed all specimens that were sent into the lab. This is a test panel that can be used with solid as well as liquid NGS test. The GeneStrat NGS test actually is validated for pan cancer, but as well as solid and liquid tests. So we can use this proficiency test. And so all genes listed, I'll share in the next slide, indicated variants that could be realized are shared there. But out of scope for us and this particular panel is MyoD1, all variants in POL-E, all variants since they're not in the panel and so not tested. But what is important is shown here, sensitivity and specificity in the middle as Biodesix result. And you can see we performed very well. Test provider reports good. To near excellent, I would conclude 100% on sensitivity and 99.3% on specificity. So there is a miss, and I'll share where that is and what insight we learned, but very, very, very good performance metrics. I know this is an eye chart, but since this webinar will be recorded and rebroadcast, people can look at this on their own. But there were 3 test specimens, and you can see multiple variants included in each of the specimens. So there's an intended answer, and then, of course, you as the test will report what your expected result was, and that's what I'll share in the following 3 slides. So first, specimen 1, on the left, intended responses, i.e. what the detected variance should be. And then on the right, what is the Biodesix response? So what did we see? And you can see there's 100% perfect match for positive variants. Of course, negative variants were also assessed in the test. Specimen 3, again, no issues. On the left, the intended response. On the right, what was detected. Again, 100% consistency in the positive variants here. Specimen 2, however, an interesting discrepancy, if you will, showed up in BRAF. So I've highlighted in bold here where Biodesix called a BRAF V600M mutation. And then in the box on the bottom, the annotation from the proficiency provider as to what this mutation call might be, and for the several labs that call this variant, what might be going on. Turns out this is actually what's called a potential multinucleotide variant, or MNV. So there are 2 potential nucleotide substitutions here, one which could result in a V600E and one in a V600M. So I would venture to say that this is not necessarily a miscall because the variant is present, but the recommendation is to merge it to a single SNV, which would be a V600E. So again, a discrepancy, but something to look out for. What I'd like to note is that in the real world, our lab has only seen this particular call in a real specimen from a patient once in the many thousands of specimens tested. Again, it's present, but there's a recommendation on the bioinformatic pipeline to merge this MNV into an SNV. So results reporting, and I'm excited about this portion of the talk because this is the piece that our physicians see, potentially patients also see. And there are certain requirements in results reporting. Now, there are many providers of reporting tools. These reporting tools need to follow guidelines. Um, First bullet, CAP, ASCO, AMP, for example. Other clinical and regulatory bodies have given guidance. These results need to be clear. They also need to be accurate. So first-time results, including, and those of you in the fields are accustomed to understanding what tiering means, but especially important are those tier 1 variants because they're actionable for treatment. The background information on the variants, the therapies, etc., needs to be constantly updated. The reports need to be customizable, at least certainly for our laboratory, with most critical information being found, if you will. That information being upfront on page 1. I'll share with you an example of the front page of our test result report. And of course, summaries of the treatment options, scientific references, etc. For laboratories such as us that is focused on rapid turnaround times, the generation of those results into the report needs to be similarly rapid. So accurate but rapid. With a 3-day turnaround to results being ready for release, we cannot have a letdown on the result report generation. So there are key needs there. Additionally, as a clinical lab, we needed end-to-end, if you will, approaches to the laboratory processing, to the result generation, to then integration into the report. So from the moment the sample hits, everything that needs to happen needs to be tightly integrated with as few touch points as possible. And of course, all of us know about IT and IT security, so the ability to house our clinical data, that demographic data from our patients and physician sites in our firewall was critically important, along with user logins that are unique and secure. And something is on the bottom here, support. So maybe overlooked, but for clinical labs is critical. Support from the provider for the test results report that meets the requirements of not only the highly accredited lab that we have, but with this high demand for turnaround time for test processing and results release. So all of these requirements went into our evaluation of a reporting tool and technology. And I'll share with you what it looks like and where we are again in the real world. So bioinformatics analysis and reporting in the GeneStrat NGS test, you can see on the right what is really a snapshot of key fields. I've taken the liberty of highlighting some of the things that are important that we've received as feedback. So the demographic information, of course, in the center, patient-physician information, conciseness of the report. The example we have here has 5 pages. This can be shorter or longer depending on what is found. But critically, on the bottom section, which shows relevant biomarkers, and in this case for GeneStrat NGS, there was a tier 1A variant, which happened to be an EML4 alpha fusion, relevant therapies in lung cancer in this case, and then outside of lung cancer, what might be relevant. But critical as well is that annotation and additional information that relates to clinical trials. In this case, several are available. So we upload this patient information results into our portal or into our secure release mechanism to then be delivered to our physicians. The wide array of the customization options, though, allows us to do controlled revisions of this test result report format to meet evolving customer as well as guideline requirements. I'm happy as well to say that the inclusion of this report in our New York State method validation with CLEP met all of the requirements from that regulatory body. So real world experiences with this tool as well. Time to report generation, I would say, is exceptional. Less than 5 minutes, 5 minutes maybe all time. The longest time we've ever taken to generate a result report, it's usually seconds to a few minutes. We've reduced the time per report by including batching and working with the provider to have those reports be more automated in terms of their generation. It interfaces with our laboratory information management systems to pull all of demographic information from patients that's needed. And then, of course, we have excellent feedback and support for updates or troubleshooting, amenable to requests, not just from our lab, because this report is obviously being provided as a service to any clinical lab doing this type of NGS testing. So our feedback, though, we've noticed, be included in requests for improvement, everything from visual formatting to functional requests. And then critical, as I said, prompt knowledge updates that are pushed out to our laboratory that can then be reviewed for inclusion in our next steps. So finally, and by no means the end of the discussion, but I certainly wanted to touch on what key messages I've probably shared here today on market performance for a relatively new liquid-based amplicon semi-automated NGS test, the GeneStrat NGS blood-based test. I share data today on updated sensitivity and specificity utilizing an independent assessor's proficiency panel. I also shared on clinical impact the decision making for this send out test, which averages 63 hours and then 59 hours if no demographic information or clinical information is missing. And then finally, we just reviewed a clinical annotation report, which is integrated tightly with the data that's being generated and variants, as well as our pipeline for demographic information to deliver a customizable, clear, secure, accurate results report with exceptional generation times. Then finally, I'd like to touch on this, which is we described in our Oncomine 2023 presentation, another now fully automated NGS system that is on the way, and we're looking forward to integrating into our lab because it allows us to potentially deliver test results with even shorter turnaround time while maintaining accuracy. In closing, I'd like to thank our team, donors, physicians for their time in really developing and delivering what is, I believe, an excellent test to our physicians and patients. So thank you for your time, and I'm happy to have questions in the follow-up session.